Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Alternative Finance Toolbox. Bringing DLT to SME financing on the EBSI infrastructure, with the participation of Jan Klesla, Senior Policy Advisor to the Czech Ministry of Industry and Trade, co-chair of the European Blockchain Partnership.
Good afternoon. I'm probably the last thing standing between you and the lunch break. So let me prove that there is nothing like a free lunch indeed. So I don't want to talk much about myself, but let me just say that I serve as a co-chair of the so-called European Blockchain Partnership that I will describe in a minute. And I also have the pleasure to be a colleague of Mariana, in a non-profit capacity as a board member of the INADBA. So what I'd like to do is to bridge, let's say, the previous panel, focusing on the quite a dynamic world of DeFi and then crypto, and the one we will have after the lunch, so the SME financing, and maybe to give you some ideas how to help the real economy with blockchain technology. So I will try to use this. Well, I believe I don't need to elaborate on the problem well, in more than a minute. A friend of mine told me that, and he's quite a lot into the SME banking, that what happened to European SMEs literally reminds him of the biblical, basically, plagues of Egypt, and he just expects locusts or frogs or something because the SMEs are squeezed after the COVID, after the financially squeezed, after the COVID, after the restrictions, after the crisis, and we all know that the SMEs are lacking capital reserves, so in many countries, and they have a problem to get a finance, the long-term finance especially, for financing investments. So this is a clear problem. We have seen the so-called smart bonds, the smart and the blockchain-based securities issued by big guys, also by European Investment Bank after the COVID, but also by banks before the COVID. Very interesting is the case of Siemens, which didn't use any bank as an intermediary this year, and basically using blockchain for issuing securities is first, well, quite a good way to do that, because we are under the quite a solid umbrella of financial regulation, so it's trusted, it's transparent, it's very important. We can open the secondary market for the bonds, and of course there's a huge efficiency. That's the main reason why the big banks are going to this area. However, for the SMEs, it's still not, let's say, quite efficient to issue their own bonds in their own capacity, because if you're not Siemens or a big guy, you don't have the skills, you don't have a technology. But we also have something we called European Blockchain Services Infrastructure. In 2019, 27 member states partnered with the European Commission to build basically a decentralized infrastructure. It's always like that, but we had to start somewhere, and the infrastructure is centralized now. It will be independent in a time, but the European Union, basically the European Commission with the member states, built the blockchain infrastructure mainly to provide public services like ID, for validation of diplomas and so on and so on. However, we have this quite a solid and robust blockchain-based infrastructure we can use also to help the SMEs. So here's come the solution. we can build the EU-wide platform for the SME bonds. To be more specific, we need to support the digital and green transformation. So there is definitely no intention to compete with a private, with any private initiatives in this area, but to support the SMEs in this very specific policy focus. It should be the recovery tool. That's quite clear. So, and of course, there are some policy, let's say, there's some policy stuff like the strategies and so on and so on. But what we want to do and what is currently being under, let's say, construction is the open and decentralized solution based on this public infrastructure to allow anyone to either issue or invest into the SMEs securities, focus solely on the digital and green transformation. Just imagine you're the entrepreneur, you're the owner of SME, you can get some kind of grant under the state aid rules. It can be like 50% or more or less, depending on your geographical area, and you lack the rest of the finance. You can't go to your bank because your bank provided you with the loans during the COVID last year, and you know your basically your friend in the bank would tell you, hey, I already gave you a lot of loans, so sorry, this is not the open possibility. Then you can use this platform. What is kind of important is that there is quite a neutral infrastructure in the core. There will be, and that's what is being built now by the consortia, is the, let's say, intermediary level to build it on the top of the infrastructure, and then anyone with the license, of course, we are in the regulated industry, can use the infrastructure. So it's basically open and decentralized decentralized system. Well, what we need to, let's say, stress is that there is a lot of regulatory issues still. We heard about the MiCA. MiCA doesn't apply on a securities market. We heard about a little bit, I think also pilot regime was mentioned. That's exactly what is going on here. The so-called pilot regime regulation. It's a little sister of MiCA, or little brother, but it's also focusing on blockchain, but on securities trading, and on the national level, we need to cope with the national regulations of electronic securities, basically. So you probably heard about the special German law on electronic securities. There's a special let's say, a legal framework in France, and so on and so on. So this needs to be solved on the intermediary level. So anyone from Greece can join, can issue the bonds, and anyone from, for instance, from Germany or France can buy the bonds, can invest. Well, I don't want to get into much technicality. However, you can see that there's a lot of things, a lot of stuff to be done off-chain, and to be registered on-chain. But the market itself should be open, let's say, in a year or two. In a year, we will start the pilot regime with the SMEs on a regional basis, depending on the let's say, regulatory arbitrage a little bit, and then we can open the EU-wide market. So it's the opportunity for banks, investors, and also the SMEs to use the infrastructure. From the perspective of the DLT, and we can say blockchain industry, is the opportunity to prove to the real economy, to the real guys like the SMEs, that there is a much value in the technology. And of course, we can slowly and steadily get into the real decentralized finance. So if you have any questions, please feel free to approach me during the lunch or after that. I'm not going to use much more time. Well, thank you and have a good lunch.